Who crossed the line is as shocking as it gets. How did these trusted officers become some of the most notorious criminals in New York's history? How did they get away with it for so long?
In 1983, I was taken into custody. I was on the papers, the headlines of all the channels. Said Mob Big got data from cop. And they accused me of giving information to Gambino people. They said they had papers with my fingerprints on them. They were made in the precinct where I worked. And they started a campaign to really get me. Who did, the New York police? Yes.
And what finally brought them down? Well, stick around. We're solving this mystery because this is not your typical story. Before we look into details, let's have a quick rundown of whom these men really were. Prior to becoming full-fledged criminals, these two detectives had completely different backgrounds. One was a wannabe gangster, while the other was a goody-goody investigator. Louis Eppolito has always been one with crime, being born into a mafia family literally. His father, Ralph Eppolito, also known as Fat the Gangster, was a made man in the Gambino crime family. So you get the picture of how Louis was exposed to a life of crime from day one. But despite his background, Louis still went on to pursue a career in law enforcement, perhaps hoping to carve out a name for himself, eventually rising to the rank of detective in 1977. This claim was backed up by the fact that when he applied to the NYPD in 1969, he falsely stated that he had no relatives in organized crime. He certainly wanted nothing to do with his background, or so he thought. Stephen Caracappa, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. He was serious, disciplined, and highly respected in the department. In fact, he was a first-grade detective who helped create the Organized Crime Homicide Unit, a division that was meant to catch mafia killers, not join them. And yet somehow, he still ended up being one of the dirtiest cops in NYPD history. It's ironic, isn't it? The very unit designed to combat the mafia had, within its ranks, detectives who would later collude with the same criminals they were supposed to apprehend. But where did it all begin? Both Eppolito and Caracappa had commendable careers in the NYPD. For Eppolito, he was just 20 years old when he joined the NYPD, but that did not stop him from ascending the ladder of success. He was inducted into the prestigious Honor Society during his time before he was promoted to the rank of detective about 8 years later. His early career went smoothly and according to how he had planned. However, all that went sideways once he got into a position of power. He flat out abused his post, leading to a suspension without pay for almost half a year. That was when he was accused of passing confidential information to Rosario Gambino, a relative of the Gambino crime family. Clearly, he was in the wrong, yet he chose to fight the case and surprisingly, he won. Shamelessly, he waltzed back into the office like Harvey Keitel's bad lieutenant after being immediately reinstated as a detective. Fresh off the hard-fought victory in the courtroom battle that had the NYPD on edge, Eppolito walked away from his post 5 years later, leaving behind a fog of mistrust thick enough to choke on. But did he care? Not one bit. Winning his case had inflated his ego to skyscraper levels, and by 1992, he strutted around like a man who thought he had beat the system. So much that he even dabbled with Hollywood. It all started when he tagged along with a friend to an audition for a little gangster flick called Goodfellas. Now, Eppolito wasn't there to land a role. No, he was just there for moral support. But fate, or maybe just his presence there, led to other plans. The casting director took one look at him and thought, "You ever thought about being in the movies?" Before he knew it, he was in front of the camera, landing the role of Fat Andy and rubbing elbows with wise guys, both real and fictional, in the legendary Bamboo Lounge scene. And that little taste of the limelight? Oh, he wanted more. Eppolito took a minor role in Predator 2 Inches 1990. After that, he figured, why not write a book? And so we were given Mafia Cop, the story of an honest cop whose family was the mob. A real page-turner, at least, if you enjoy a man tooting his own horn for a few hundred pages. In it, Eppolito painted himself as the ultimate survivor, a guy who walked the thin line between law and the world of crime without ever losing his balance. A man who, despite the rumors and accusations, stayed clean. Or so he wanted everyone to believe. But enough about Eppolito. What about Caracappa? He was a different breed entirely. If Eppolito was the loudmouth who basked in attention, Caracappa was the ghost in the system, the quiet professional. He'd been grinding away in the NYPD's organized crime homicide unit since the late 70s, pulling the strings behind the scenes while others took the credit. When he retired in 1992 on a disability pension, he didn't chase Hollywood dreams or write self-congratulatory memoirs. Instead, he played it cool, settling in Staten Island before eventually packing up and heading to Las Vegas with his old pal Eppolito in the mid-90s. But don't mistake his low profile for a lack of impact. Caracappa was the real deal, the guy the NYPD relied on when it came to understanding the Mafia's inner workings. If there was dirt to be found, he'd find it. If there was a case to be cracked, he'd crack it. He wasn't about the fame, he was about results. Eppolito and Caracappa were a unit, a force to be reckoned with. Eppolito had the street smarts, the connections, the swagger. Caracappa had the brains, the patience, the ability to see 10 steps ahead. Together, they were the NYPD's elite, the guys trusted to keep the city from drowning in crime. But trust? Well, let's just say it's a fragile thing. And for these two, the cracks were already starting to show. All right, so we just talked about how Eppolito and Caracappa climbed the ranks in the NYPD, but trust me, this story is just getting started. Because next, we're diving into the part where things really go off the rails, murders, double crosses, and backdoor deals that will make your jaw drop. And hey, let me know in the comments, do you think these guys started dirty? Or did power and greed push them over the edge? So, how did they become hitmen? Balancing life as a detective and a mafia hitman takes a lot of compartmentalization, like juggling flaming swords while blindfolded. By day, these guys were just doing their jobs, wearing badges, investigating crime, and keeping up appearances. But by night, they were plotting hits, feeding info to criminals, and basically living two completely different lives. For years, nobody suspected a thing. I mean, think about it. If two cops are committing the crimes, who's gonna investigate them? It didn't happen overnight. No, it was a slow burn, like that one friend who casually drops little secrets over drinks before you realize they've been gossiping about everyone. Just a little inside information here and there, but the thing is, once you sell your soul to the mafia, there's no going back. Their journey into the dark side began in the mid-1980s when they started leaking sensitive information to the Lucchese crime family. Now, in case you haven't heard of Anthony Gaspipe Casso, he was the kind of underboss who made you rethink your career choices, especially if you happen to be a cop. He and his boss, Vittorio Vic Amuso, thought it was a good idea to slip detectives Eppolito and Caracappa $375,000 in bribes starting in 1985. And just to make it interesting, these payments weren't just for a little chit-chat. Oh no, these were linked to murder contracts. Nothing says trustworthy like a little cash and a hit on the side. By 1986, things started to get really messy. After someone tried to kill Casso, he ordered the two detectives to kidnap James Heidel, a Gambino family associate, and hand him over to be murdered by Casso himself. It was a done deal. But hey, that's not all. Under the orders of Casso, they also went ahead and killed Bruno Facciolo, a made member of the Lucchese family, thinking he might be an informant. And just to send a really strong message to anyone who thought about snitching, they shoved a stuffed canary in Facciolo's mouth. Then 1985 happened, and things really took a dark turn. After John Gotti decided to murder Paul Castellano, Casso appointed Eppolito and Caracappa at Gambino capo Edward Eddie Lino. They ambushed him in 1990, shooting him 9 times. At this point, it's safe to say these two weren't just cops, they were working overtime for the mob. Fast forward to the 1990s, and it seemed like the Mafia cops were untouchable, right? Wrong. With the FBI coming down hard on all the major crime families, Eppolito and Caracappa figured it was time to trade in their badges for some desert heat, so they packed up and headed to Las Vegas. But guess what? Even in Vegas, they were still making moves, still working with the Mafia behind closed doors. In 1993, they were even asked to take out John Jr. Gotti, but that plot fizzled out faster than a sparkler. Then there was the whole kill Stephen Wonderboy Crea plan, which fell apart due to, well, indictments. Not ideal. But the real crown jewel here happened in the late 1990s when these guys decided they'd take a crack at killing Sammy the Bull Gravano. Yes, that's Sammy. You know, the guy who flipped on Gotti, but that plan never came to fruition. Gotti's brother, Peter, promised a reward that was never claimed, mostly because Gravano got caught and sentenced for drug trafficking in 2003. Oh, and remember the book called Mafia Cop? The one with Eppolito as an honest cop whose family was the mob? Yeah, the book was a surefire hit. Eppolito even went on a publicity tour, including a memorable appearance on the Sally Jesse Raphael show. And here's where things started to unravel. It was during this moment that Eppolito's long-set downfall would begin. It started with Betty Heidel, the mother of James Heidel, remember him? The one who was tortured and murdered by yours truly? She spotted Eppolito on TV, recognized the stocky guy who had come to her door years ago, and suddenly, the jig was up. She contacted authorities, and the investigation into Eppolito was back on. During that time, Eppolito was still living in Las Vegas. Meanwhile, investigations that led to Casso had him turned into state's witness. He spilled the details on how he had been paying Eppolito $4,000 a month for years for confidential info. That was it. This whole event sparked a 10-year investigation into Eppolito. Now, the million-dollar question here would be, were they caught? First of all, they thought they were untouchable. And honestly, for a long time, they were. But every criminal makes mistakes, and these two were no exception. Their little reign of corruption could have gone on forever if it weren't for a little thing called persistence and a touch of luck. And by luck, I mean the FBI reopening old Mafia cases in the early 2000s. It was like they were dusting off the old files, revisiting wiretap recordings and going, let's see what we missed. And there it was. The rumors about two cops on the mob's payroll started surfacing. The biggest breakthrough came when Burton Kaplan, their trusty middleman, was arrested for something totally unrelated. Now Kaplan knew everything. And when your back's against the wall with a lengthy prison sentence hovering over you, you start thinking, why should I go down alone? So he did exactly that and flipped the story. Kaplan told the feds everything he knew, giving them exactly what they needed to finally take down Eppolito and Caracappa. A breakthrough came when Burton Kaplan, their middleman, was arrested on unrelated charges. Kaplan knew everything. Facing a long prison sentence, he decided, why should he go down alone? So he spilled everything to the feds, giving them exactly what they needed to finally take down Eppolito and Caracappa. Fast forward to 2005, when the feds finally tracked down the duo in Las Vegas. They had retired, thinking they could just sip margaritas and live the good life. Spoiler alert, they were so wrong. The two were hit with a laundry list of charges: racketeering, obstruction of justice, extortion, and get this, 8 counts of murder and conspiracy. Yup, 8. The bodies were piling up, and it wasn't just a few shady street deals. They were involved in the murders of people like James Heidel, Nicholas Guido, Israel Greenwald, John Otto Heidel, and plenty more. And let's not forget that they even had their dirty hands in the plot to kill Sammy Gravano, because why not toss in some extra chaos? It's like the grand finale of a crime novel. Only the plot twist here is that it's not fiction, it's real life, and these two thought they were getting away with it. But in the end, their grand criminal escapade came crashing down because karma, as it turns out, doesn't take bribes. Next up would be their trial, and what would become of them. Maybe they did bribe their way out of this, or maybe they had someone to pin it on in the end, Or perhaps a miracle? I'll keep you guessing until we get there. Feel free to tell me what you think in the comments. When they finally faced justice, you'd think they'd show some remorse, right? Nope. These guys still acted like they were untouchable right up until the judge dropped the hammer. Let's backtrack a little bit. Burton Kaplan, who was a businessman and a career criminal, wasn't just playing the role of a middleman. He was the mastermind that linked Casso to Eppolito and Caracappa. Realizing he was in trouble, he flung trust out the window, and when it came time to testify, he didn't hold back. For 2 whole days, Kaplan laid it all out in court, riveting stuff that caught the attention of the jury. On the 30th of June, 2006, a federal judge, Jack B. Weinstein, tossed out the racketeering murder conviction for Eppolito and Caracappa. Why, you ask? A technicality. Apparently, the statute of limitations on the racketeering conspiracy charge had expired. Can you believe it? After all the crime, corruption, and betrayal, it almost slipped through the cracks because of a technicality. But not to worry, that wasn't the end of the story. Fast forward to the 17th of September 2008, and the appeals court acted fast. They slapped those convictions right back into place. Meanwhile, New York City wasn't having any of it. They paid out $18.4 million to settle 7 lawsuits filed by the families of the victims these cops betrayed. That's a whole lot of compensation for a whole lot of heartache. On the other hand, Eppolito, being ever the showman, couldn't resist the chance to put on a little drama. He stood in front of the court to deliver what he probably thought was a powerful monologue, saying, "The federal government can take my life. I'm a man. They can't take my soul. They can't take my pride. They can't take my dignity. I was a hardworking cop. I never hurt anybody. I never kidnapped anybody. I never did any of this." Then, in March 2009, the final hammer fell. Eppolito was sentenced to life in prison plus 100 years, while Caracappa got life plus 80 years. Oh, and they were both given $4 million fines. And in a final verdict from karma itself, both men have passed away in prison. Caracappa died in 2017 of cancer, and Eppolito followed in 2019. His cause of death remains unknown till today. Even in death, they weren't legends, they were just 2 corrupt cops who got what they deserved. It's like the saying goes, every day is for the thief, but one day is for the owner. So, what's the moral of this story? Power corrupts, and if you play both sides of the law, you're bound to lose. But if you thought this was crazy, wait until you watch the next film on a hitman who single-handedly murdered 36 people, and then one betrayal changed everything. The Butcher of Brooklyn, a true story of the most ruthless murders in Mafia history, which you won't want to miss.